last month, we commemorated the arrival of the first enslaved Africans to North America 400 years ago. The first documented Africans to arrive in the English-speaking colony of what would become Virginia arrived in August 1619 on the ship White Lion, a Dutch man-of-war ship carrying enslaved cargo from the west coast of Africa. The arrival of the ship was reported by colonist John Rolfe, who wrote, "About the latter end of August, a Dutch man-of-war of the burden of 160 tuns arrived at Point Comfort. The commander's name Captain Joe. He brought not anything but 20 and odd Negroes, which the governor and Cape merchant bought for victuals." The 20 and odd Negroes had been captured in 1619 from the kingdom of Ndogo in Angola. They were packed with more than 350 enslaved Africans aboard the São João Batista, a Portuguese slave ship that set sail from the coast of Africa, bound for what then was called Vera Cruz, on the coast of Mexico. The ship was overcrowded. It suffered horrible mortality on the voyage to Vera Cruz. And in the middle of the voyage, on the high seas, the ship was attacked by two English pirate ships called the Treasurer and the other called the White Lion. And they were hoping to steal gold, but instead they found human cargo. The English boarded the ship and split the human cargo between the two ships, the White Lion and the Treasurer. Weeks later, the White Lion arrived at Port Comfort in Virginia, where its captain traded the enslaved people for food. Among those traded, a man and a woman who were later named Anthony and Isabella, and whose baby, William, would become the first documented African baby baptized in English North America, and no less in the Anglican Church. This was the beginning of the United States as we know it, a bastion of cruel and inhumane capitalistic pursuits, which has sacrificed humanity on the altar of profits. Not only that, we have been fed a narrative that extols hard work and pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps. However, the hypocrisy is that those who would extol that narrative are the very ones who benefited from the free labor that our ancestors gave to build this country. The ancestors paid the price, and the enslavers and their ancestors have reaped the benefits. If you don't believe me, look at the wealth gap in America between blacks and whites. It didn't develop yesterday. It started developing in 1619. American history is replete with horrific episodes that prevented the accumulation of black wealth for centuries. First, slavery, then indentured servitude under Jim Crow, segregated housing and schooling, seizure of property, and racial discrimination. The result was that in 1962, 2 years before the passage of landmark civil rights legislation and the Great Society program, the average wealth of white households was 7 times greater than that of black households. Yet, after decades of declining discrimination and the construction of a modern welfare state, the ratio remains the same. The mean of black household wealth is $138,200, and for whites that number is $933,700. That is why I, for one, stand in favor of reparations for the uncompensated, inhumane servitude which built this country from the ground up. We are owed it. And in order for America to rid itself of the guilt of American chattel slavery, it must be paid. Our labor was not free. We bled and died for the prosperity of this nation. And so, as I digress, we live in a society that is marked by the mentality that we must get as much as we can for as little as we can on the backs of whoever we can. We always want to get something for nothing. We all do. I love going to the grocery store and finding those buy one, get one free sales. Don't you? I feel like I have accomplished something and even perhaps gotten over when I can go home and tell my wife that for the mere cost of 1 gallon of ice cream, I got 2. I love getting free stuff at conferences and meetings, and I often come back with bags chock full of loot. I love getting free samples in the mail. I like to get Dial soap every now and then, and those Lysol wipes and shampoo, just one less thing for me to buy. I love getting something for nothing. I love going to the store and getting those free samples of pizza and snack mix and even wine. I love getting something for nothing. I love being able to take my car in to be serviced and get that free car wash. I love getting something for nothing. I love getting a coupon that says for every 5 shirts laundered, 1 shirt will be laundered free. I love getting something for nothing, as I suspect that most of you do as well. I have no doubt told you, and I've told this story over the years, I call it my chicken story, about a man who went to visit his relatives. On the day of his arrival, they cooked up and served a large batch of freshly fried chicken. The next day, they served the leftover chicken. But even after that, they still didn't eat it all. And so consequently, on the 3rd day, they still had chicken to serve their visiting relative. And beloved, as we chicken-eating folks know, as we are all aware, even the best fried chicken in the world loses some of its zest after it has been warmed over a couple of times. On the 3rd day, chicken that has been twice warmed over tastes just like what it is. Chicken that has been twice warmed over. Realizing this, his hostess said to him, "I guess you're tired of chicken by now." And he looked at her and said, "Don't make me no difference as long as it's free." Beloved, there is much goodness in life, from the wonders of nature to the divine rights bestowed on us through the goodness and grace of God, from the natural human rights of all men and women to the constitutional rights granted to us by the law of this land in which we live. We enjoy all the goodness with often no personal cost to us. There are people whose enjoyment of anything is directly related to how little it costs them. If it's free, whatever it is, it's okay. No matter how bad it is, whether they need it or not, whether they want it or not, if it's free, they'll take it. We, if we are honest with ourselves, would have to admit that we all like to get something for nothing. But the danger, beloved, is that you might just get what you paid for. To be sure, there are some things that money just can't buy. And I like from time to time to watch television, and I'm a fan, as some of you know, of commercials. And a few years ago, about this time of year, there was a MasterCard commercial which showed three little boys preparing to return to school from summer vacation. And they were all dressed up in their new school clothes and their shiny new backpacks strapped on their shoulders. And in the background is the music from the old school group, Parliament Funkadelic. As Parliament Funkadelic performed one of their all-time hits, We Like the Funk, in the background, these three young men began to do what we used to call getting down. We like the funk. Yeah. You gotta have that funk. Yeah. We like the funk. Yeah. Y'all supposed to be church people. Like These three young men who must have been 6 or 7 years old began to get down. And their dance of choice was the robot. Some of y'all still doing that dance today. As the first young man began to dance, then the other two, in their brand new school clothes and their shiny new backpacks, started doing the robot in solid syncopation with Parliament Funkadelic. They had their own style. They had their own rhythmic movements which could only be understood by them. Much like some of y'all got dance moves that only you understand. And the commercial says, backpack, $20. People who understand you, priceless. Yes, beloved, there are some things that are priceless. Yet all too often, in a world obsessed with getting something for nothing, we are not willing to pay the price for the things that are the most precious. But we would be mistaken, beloved, if we believed that things that cost us nothing are free. Everything in life costs something. And if some things come to us without cost, the answer is simple. Somebody already paid the price so that we might freely enjoy them. For example, we enjoy nature. We enjoy the birds and the trees and the flowers without cost. But somebody paid a price for us to enjoy them. The Bible says that in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And after God had made the world, the scriptures tell us that thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And when God finished the work that God had done, God rested on the seventh day. God labored to give us the universe. God labored so that we might enjoy the sun and the moon and the stars. God labored so that we could hear the sweet song of the sparrow and feel the soft sand in our feet. All of these things are free because God paid the price. What else is free? Well, anyone who is not free. Anyone who knows anything about love must realize that love is not free. Love is something that we must work at. Love is something that we must invest in and sacrifice for and give in order to have. Anyone who wants to keep everything for himself or herself will not know love. Anyone who is too cheap to give up some independence and ego, some time and talent and money, anybody who is too cheap to give up some hopes and desires for the sake and well-being of somebody else will never know the meaning of love. People whose relationships and marriages we admire have had to pay a price. They had to make some sacrifice for the sake of their relationship. They had to bend sometimes when they didn't feel like it. They had to forgive each other and love each other despite imperfections. And beloved, never believe that the rights and privileges we enjoy have come to us without cost. If we as black folks have the right to speak our minds, assemble without fear and worship God in freedom, somebody had to pay a price. If we are able to vote and run for elected office, somebody had to pay a price. If we can live basically wherever we can afford, somebody had to pay a price. If we can work in Fortune 500 companies and become a part of any profession that we choose, somebody had to pay a price. If we can attend school and learn to read and write and have the halls of knowledge open to us, somebody had to pay a price. If we can eat at any restaurant we can afford or engage in any form of entertainment that we choose, somebody had to pay a price. In every war that this country has fought to secure its freedom, black blood has flowed with the blood of others. Somebody paid the price. In silent graves, both marked and unmarked, there have been those who dared get out of their prescribed place and stand up to a racist society, enduring hostility and violence and death. And that's what Alexander Crummell did. Read about it in your bulletin. Alexander Crummell. And that's why I'm able to stand before you as your priest. Somebody paid the price. If you were not the first black person to occupy your position in your company, then some other black person who was the first paid the price for you. If you are the first, then you are paying the price for someone else and enduring the insults and attitudes and frustrations that somebody else can freely enjoy what is costing you so much. And the irony of this thing is that in 2019, we're still talking about the first black folks in certain positions. The bottom line, and the thing that we must begin to understand, beloved, is that anything worth having will cost us something. I've tried to explain this to my children over the years so that they can begin to understand that anything worth having is worth working and sacrificing for, because everything has a cost. Let me bring it home. From our text from the Gospel of Luke, Luke reminds each of us, each one of us who would forget, that our faith has a cost, and we must consider the cost. Some of us have the notion that once you are a Christian, life should be easy and everything should be rosy all the time. But I'm sure I have some witnesses that the opposite is true. There is a cost. Sometimes you gotta leave folk behind. Sometimes you've got to say no when you want to say yes, and say yes when you want to say no. Jesus gives us some hard words today. Jesus disabuses us of our candy-coated notions of discipleship. Being a disciple of Christ will cost you something. And I dare say, beloved, that if you have not given up something to walk this Christian journey, then maybe, just maybe, you need to sit down and reevaluate your relationship with God. Hear the words of our Lord again today from the Gospel of Luke when he says, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost to see whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying, 'This fellow began to build and was not able to finish.' Or what king, going out to wage war against another king, will not sit down first and consider whether he is able to, with 10,000, to oppose the one who comes against him with 20,000? If he cannot, then while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for the terms of peace. So therefore, none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all of your possessions." These are hard words to hear. Some scholars comment on this passage and say that Jesus was trying to shake up and awaken, if you will, the lukewarm and half-hearted Christian. Other commentators comment that these hard, harsh words of Jesus serve to weed out the serious disciples from those who are less likely to go the distance. Jesus' words are hard, and his pronunciation about families is difficult for me to stomach. Why would a God who values family and relationships admonish us to hate our own? Well, after I thought about it, I believe that no matter how hard these words are, that the Word of God is still true. God values above all our relationship with God. And I believe God is simply saying to us that we must be willing to give up what is important to us in this life. We must be willing to detach from the influences that separate us from true discipleship. We must get our priorities straight. We must be willing to give up something for the God who gives us everything. We must understand, beloved, that if we want to be Christians, followers of Christ, then it's going to cost us something. Some of us are behaving like the children of Israel did and have been unwilling to give up our gods for the one true God. In the Old Testament book of Deuteronomy, Moses gives his farewell address to a new generation of Israelites who are about to cross over into the promised land after 40 years of wandering around in the desert. And like a parent, he admonishes them to make the right choices. He warns them against disobedience and unfaithfulness to God and bowing down to other gods like the generation before. They had placed other gods, other things before the true and living God. And as a consequence, this previous generation could not possess the blessing that God had in store for them. The previous generation was unwilling to give up their golden calves and insisted on holding on to them at all costs. The previous generation was unwilling to give up and detach and separate from those things which separated them from God. They bowed down to other gods. And so Moses hoped to help this new generation avoid the same fate. But beloved, this ought to cause us to examine our own lives for a minute. What are we worshiping that we refuse to give up? What are we at all cost holding on to that keeps us on the outer edges of discipleship? What is it that we are not willing to cash in to pay the cost to walk with Jesus? For some of us, it is some relationship that we are too stubborn to sever. We are connected in soul ties to people that are not our spouses, that we think we need, and we stay in abusive situations with because we are too afraid to allow God to be Lord of our lives. We worship our children and pour our entire life into them, only to taste the bitter yoke of disappointment. We neglect our spouses. We neglect our obligation to God because we got to work our fingers to the bone to get Ray and Pookie them another pair of shoes, or bail them out of jail. And we are so bound up with our children that we can't even pledge to God's kingdom. It's going to cost us something. We worship our jobs until we find every excuse in the book for being unable to serve God on Sunday. I need my rest. We worship our money until we allow money to destroy relationships and cause turmoil and wreak havoc in our lives. We think there is safety in money. But if you could speak to the thousands who died in the premier financial center of the world as we come up upon September 11th, what would they tell you? Their money did them no good when the planes hit. Being a disciple is going to cost us something. Worship our spouses and worship our homes and worship our cars and worship our affiliations. But Jesus is calling us to understand that we've got to give up something to follow him. We would much rather take the easy road or hold on to things in our lives that really don't matter at all, or may even hinder the blessings that God has for us. We would even rather worship and hold on to our grudges than to forgive. We would rather hold on to our bitterness instead of counting our blessings. We would rather hold on to our anger for dear life rather than give it up to gain eternal life. We would rather hold on to our pride and kill ourselves in the process instead of possessing the peace that comes with humility. Everything has a cost. Now, as we enter this time of stewardship in our church, let me set it in that context as well. The faith that has been passed down from generation to generation did not come to us without cost. Religion has never been free. Sacrifice is inherent in the very nature of religion. From the very beginning, men and women made sacrifices and gave offerings to God as they prayed for their blessings, sought help, and gave thanks. From the very beginning, giving and sacrifice was a part of worship. From the very beginning, it was believed that one ought not come to God empty-headed, empty-hearted, or empty-handed. It was believed that if one were coming to give thanks, then one ought to offer an expression of gratitude. Some ask, why should I give to the church? They won't miss my $2. Others say, if God owns all the earth and its riches, then surely God doesn't need my $5. Beloved, don't get it twisted. We give not because the church would close its doors if we didn't. For I believe the church will remain until Jesus comes again. Amen. The church existed long before we received a box of offering envelopes, and it will continue to exist until the end of the age. We give because God has blessed us individually. We make our individual expressions of thanksgiving and praise. We give not in order to help heaven or the church from going bankrupt if we kept our money in our pockets. Many a person has stopped giving for one reason or the other because they're mad at somebody. And to their dismay, the church continues to move on. What they don't realize is that when they stop, the Holy Spirit moves somebody else's heart to start. Our offering is our act of witness. We can all give as God has blessed us. Everything has a cost. If we want to receive all that someone has to offer, then we ought to be at least willing to give something in return. We must be careful not to be someone who wants to receive all the time and giving little or nothing. Whatever we have, whether little or much, we ought to offer it in praise to God. Beloved, to follow Christ is truly to know God and know that it will cost us something. It cost Abraham something to give us our covenant relationship with God because he had to become a wandering nomad and journey by faith to a land that God had promised. Abraham, in order to teach us how to trust God without reservation, was prepared to sacrifice his own son. In order to give us the law, it cost Moses something. He had to pay the price by giving up his position as a son of Pharaoh to assume the thankless task as a liberator. It cost Martin Luther King something when he gave up his desire and ambition to live a comfortable life. He gave it up and became the assassinated leader of the civil rights movement in America. Everything has a cost. But we must remember, we cannot exist on the sacrifices of others. We too have a price to pay. But you know, it gets easier for me. It gets easier for me because when I think about the one who paid the ultimate price for me by dying on a cross for my sins, when I think about how good God has been to me, when I think about how far God has brought me, when I think about how God has kept me, when I think about the fact that the Lord has and continues to be my shepherd, I shall not want. When I think about the fact that he makes me to lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters and restores my soul. When I think about the fact that he leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. When I think about when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I ain't got to fear nothing, for God is with me. God's rod and staff, they comfort me. When I think about the fact that he prepares a table before me in the presence of those haters who hate me. He anoints my head with oil and my cup runneth over. When I think about surely his goodness and mercy will follow